Hi guys, I hope you're all doing really well. My name is Sarah and welcome to What the Horror, the channel where we talk about horror movies old and new. Also, welcome to a brand new episode of Truly Horror, the series where we talk about the true stories, the true events and true crimes surrounding certain horror movies, the behind the scenes stuff that is often stranger and scarier than the movies themselves. So, first Truly Horror of 2023, it feels good to be back. I always have fun doing these episodes. This is my favourite series to do on my channel. So for the first Truly Horror of 2023, we are looking at the true story and horrors behind the movie Gonjiam Haunted Asylum. This has actually been a highly requested one. Quite a few of you guys have been wanting me to talk about this movie for a while, so I hope you enjoy it. Oh, and I just want to apologise for any mispronunciations of the Korean names in this episode. I am going to try my best. I have put them into a pronunciation website, but you know, I'm only human, so if I butcher this language, I do apologise. I personally really enjoy Asian horror, so I was really happy when I stumbled across Gonjiam Haunted Asylum last year, although I did end up watching half of it through my fingers. A true testament to what hype can do to our expectations with movies. I went into this expecting it to be the scariest film I had ever seen, hence the watching it through my fingers, but it wasn't quite as scary as my expectations had pictured. It's still terrifying though, don't get me wrong. Gonjiam has some incredibly effective scares and moments that will make your skin crawl. Gonjiam Haunted Asylum is a Korean found footage horror film that was released in 2018 and directed by Yoon Bum-shek. The crew of a horror web series travels to an abandoned asylum for a live broadcast. It soon encounters much more than expected as it moves deeper inside the nightmarish old building. Gonjiam was a huge success on release and has become the third most watched horror film in South Korea. It's also been a success in the West with a rating of 91% on Rotten Tomatoes and many people citing it as the scariest film they've ever seen. So like with most of my Truly Horror episodes, what we will do is we will cover the film version of events first and then we will look into the real life events afterwards. Also, just because we are going to talk about what happens in the film, just a quick warning that there will be spoilers included in this episode. So the film opens with two teenage boys filming their exploration of the abandoned Gonjiam Hospital. The hospital is well known as a haunted hotspot, with rumours of the director of the hospital having killed off all of her patients and then disappearing. So the two teenagers head to the intensive care unit, room 402, which is said to be impossible to open. It's the only closed door in the hospital. And while they're trying to open the door, they hear the sound of a ping pong ball. The two teens disappear from the hospital, but their footage is recovered, and a ghostly face appears to be looking out of the window in one of the doors. This grabs the interest of Ha-yoon, who runs a YouTube channel called Horror Times. Through an episode on his YouTube channel, Ha-yoon explains the history of the hospital. Within the film, Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital is considered one of the 3 most haunted houses in Korea and was selected as one of the 7 freakiest places on the planet by CNN. It was opened in May 1961 and considered the best mental hospital in Korea, but it closed in 1979 after a mass of patients took their own lives and the director of the hospital disappeared. There were rumours that the hospital had been built on the site of brutal murders to cover them up, or that it was the national torturing facility in the 60s and 70s only disguised as an asylum. Another rumour was that the multiple patients who took their own lives were actually killed by the director, who didn't disappear but then actually died. Ha-yoon states that there have been countless claims of ghost sightings and hearings of wailings after the closure of the asylum. But the biggest rumour is about room 402, the only locked room in the building. The rumour says that whoever opens the room will be cursed to death. Ha-yoon, for his YouTube channel Horror Times, decides to form a group of ghost hunters and take them into Gonjiam Asylum on the 26th of October, the anniversary of its closure. His aim is to, uncover the truths of these rumours, and he's going to live stream the whole thing using different types of cameras, from handheld, static follow cams which track movement, drones and GoPros that are attached to each person on a harness on their torso. He's hoping that the live stream will reach 1 million views, and of course this gets the ghost hunting team very excited and inspires them to want to go and see this place, although some of them are already ghost hunters and thrill seekers themselves. As the group head to Gonjiam Asylum, they talk a little bit more about various rumours that they've heard about the place. Some have heard varying stories about how the director took her own life, and some had heard the rumour that people have seen ghosts of patients, but also of a high school girl. Apparently, 30 years ago, 3 high school girls ventured into the hospital to, quote, test their nerve and were found unconscious outside of room 402. 2 of them woke up but then jumped off a building, but the third never regained consciousness. When the Horror Time group finally reach the site of the hospital, they find that the gates are locked and barricaded. Ha-yoon also says that the police patrol around the area day and night to catch and stop people who are trying to get into the hospital. So they decide to park further away, and they enter in from the back through the woods, avoiding any security cameras. Once inside the asylum, the group begins to explore the building. They go to the reception desk where they place some holy water. They explore the director's room after the door to it seemingly closes on its own, and then they split up to explore different floors of the building. The rooms and corridors of the asylum are all dark, covered in dirt and grime, water and litter, and the walls are decorated with writing and graffiti from previous visitors from over the years. The group return to the director's room, where they decide to perform a ritual to call out any spirits there. Bells have been hung around the room on string, and as they're performing the ritual, it begins to jingle, and the group freaks out, running out of the director's room. But it is revealed to the audience that the Horror Time staff have actually set this up, and other scares as well, to get good footage for the live stream. However, not long after this reveal, genuinely strange and terrifying things begin to happen. Scares not set up by the staff. Writing on the wall changes. One of the women, Charlotte's scarf, is pulled, and when another woman, Ha-yoon, puts her hand in a hole in a box, something grabs it from inside and scratches it. Scared and concerned about their safety, the group in the asylum, fairly begin to panic and want to leave, but Ha-yoon, who is running the live stream from a tent up in the woods, refuses to let them, saying that if they stop now, it will have all been for nothing. But things very quickly escalate. Furniture begins to move and fly across rooms on its own, and while trying to escape, Ji Hyun is possessed and Charlotte is transported inside of room 402, where she is attacked by a ghost. 3 of the group, Sung Hyun, Ah Yeon and Yi Hyun, hear Charlotte screams from the other side of the door, and when they try to save her, they themselves end up locked inside room 402. They're all taunted by the ghost of the patients and the teenage girl, terrifying them until they are finally attacked. Ha-yoon, still up in the tent, is angered by the others abandoning the stream, and he heads down into the asylum himself. And using a drone to go ahead, he sees footage of someone seemingly struggling in a window on the top floor. But once he's in the building, he approaches the same window from within the footage, and it turns out that this was actually an image of his future self being attacked by one of the ghosts, who now appears behind him. And finally, we see the last member of the group, Sung-wook, who was knocked out earlier by flying furniture. He awakens to find he's tied to a wheelchair. The chair turns and rolls into room 402, and we can assume he meets the same fate as the others. Apparently, before the release of the film Gonjiam Haunted Asylum, the owner of the hospital filed a lawsuit against the film being shown in theatres and cinemas. The owner of the hospital was at that point still trying to sell the property, and he feared that the movie would negatively impact any potential sale. But in March 2018, a court in Seoul ruled in favour of the movie, and it was released that same month. So what about the real Gonjiam Asylum? I mean, the movie is based on a real place, so is it based on real ghost stories? Well, of course it is. A former psychiatric hospital suddenly closes and stands abandoned for 2 decades. Of course, there are ghost stories surrounding it. So, first we'll talk a little bit about the place itself, then we'll look at the real legends and ghost stories surrounding it, and then finally we'll look at what the true story behind the ghost stories are. Now, I do want to point out that we're not overflowing with information on the Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital in the West. Most of the information is in Korean, and what there is in English has been translated, and I found that some of the sources were giving conflicting information, so just bear that in mind and don't take all of this information as gospel. Also, I just want to mention that some of the rumours and legends include reports of cruelty in the hospital towards patients, and while we can't know for sure exactly what went on behind those closed doors, I think it's only fair to remember that these are only rumours and not a factual reflection of the asylum as a working psychiatric hospital, or for that matter, a true reflection of any psychiatric hospital. Okay, so the Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital was established outside Gyeonggi-do in South Korea in the town of Gonjiam. Some sources claim it opened in 1961 and some claim it was actually in 1992. Now, it could be that the building was built in 1961 and was only made into a psychiatric hospital in 92, or perhaps it was that the final owner of the building had bought it in 1992. The original building was over 11,000 meters squared and covered 3 floors. In the early 1990s, the owner had 2 new buildings added, which increased the hospital size by 500 meters squared. The hospital closed in 1996, not 1979 as the film claims, and was then abandoned and left to deteriorate for 2 decades. The general public weren't really sure why the hospital had suddenly closed, and rumours began to circulate, as they do. The site became a bit of a hotspot for people wanting a thrill or an adventure, and with visits to a spooky abandoned building came the ghost stories, and with ghost stories came word of mouth, and more people began to visit the hospital in search of the paranormal. And in 2012, CNN did actually publish an article listing Gonjiam Asylum as one of the most horrifying places in the world, and it was also considered the 3rd most haunted site in Korea, just as the movie claimed. With the publication of the article, Gonjiam Asylum saw a large increase in visitors looking for a scare, and eventually the movie Gonjiam Haunted Asylum was released in March 2018. Not long after the film's release, on the 28th of May 2018, the Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital was demolished. According to the rumours and legends, while the hospital was open and running, there was cruel treatment of the patients by the staff and most notably by the director of the hospital. Not the owner, but the man in charge of running it. Many patients apparently died mysteriously in a very short space of time, and this is what is rumoured to have caused the hospital to close. Some said that the deaths were caused by doctors at the hospital who had been driven mad and had conducted experiments on the patients. Others say it was the director who murdered them all, either driven mad or on some occasions possessed by a ghost who was already haunting the building. As well as the rumour of the massive patient deaths is the supposed disappearance of the director. Some say he was led to kill himself by the ghost who possessed him. Others say he fled and went into hiding because he didn't want to be arrested for the patient deaths. In both of those scenarios, the rumours say the owner of the hospital fled the country completely to avoid being investigated for the deaths of the patients and or the death of the director. And because of so many mysterious deaths, the legend goes that the ghosts of the patients and the director haunted the abandoned asylum for the 2 decades that it remained standing. There were multiple reports of ghost sightings and of hearing wailing and screaming from inside the building. In the movie, there is a big focus on the intensive care room, room 402. Well, in real life, there was a legend of a room, but this time it was room 206. It was apparently the only room with a closed door in the whole building, so just like in the movie, and it was said to be the room where the murders were committed and where the ghosts all liked to hang out or were at their strongest. So look, as far as the real life rumours and ghost stories go, they're pretty close to what is depicted in the movie, but what about the truth behind the rumours? Well, as great a ghost story as it is, the truth is, it's just that. It's just a story. The Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital director, who was supposed to have either died or fled, was actually alive and well when the hospital closed, and apparently went on to open another psychiatric hospital east of Seoul. According to one article online, there were no known reports of complaints from patients or relatives about mistreatment. There was no investigation into staff or patient deaths, and the patients were reportedly transferred to another hospital when the Gonjiam Asylum closed. The real reason the hospital closed was because of finances. Exciting, I know, right? There was a Water Source Protection Act implemented in South Korea, and because of that, there was now a legal requirement for the hospital to have a new sewage treatment facility. This led to a disagreement between the owner and the director as to whether or not it was worth the financial cost, and because no agreement was made, the hospital was closed in 1996. And then the owner passed away in 1997, and with there being still no sign of a new sewage treatment facility being built, the hospital remained closed. The owner's son inherited the hospital, but he failed to maintain it, and so over the years it just fell into disrepair. As far as the ghosts go, I guess that really comes down to your own personal beliefs, but with no mass patient deaths or director deaths, it negates the origins of the ghosts. Like I said earlier, the hospital was demolished in May 2018, and since then nothing else has been built on the site. It could have been demolished because they were struggling to sell it as a building, or perhaps it was demolished to stop people trespassing and hunting for ghosts. Either way, that is the true story behind the Gonjiam Haunted Asylum. So what did you think to the true story behind the ghost story? What do you believe really happened there? I mean, do you think ghosts haunted the abandoned rooms and corridors of the hospital, or do you think it was just a spooky looking building left to rack and ruin because two people couldn't come to a decision? Because honestly, if the hospital's future was in the hands of me making a decision, it would have ended up the same way that it did. I hope you guys enjoyed today's Truly Horror. Don't forget to let me know in the comments any other episodes you would like to see in the Truly Horror series. But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, don't go ghost hunting in any abandoned hospitals, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye guys.